Hello, world. We are live. Welcome to the February 2024 edition of the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. I'm Dan Sapelsa. I'm a developer at Vehicle, and along with my co-host, Margaret Tavares, we're thrilled to bring you two wonderful speakers, well-known speakers from the Laravel community this month. We're going to share some incredible knowledge with us. Speaking of my co-host, Margaret, how are you doing today, Margaret?
I'm doing pretty good, Dan. Thanks for asking. Excited for this meetup today. So we got some pretty great speakers coming up.
Absolutely. We are very excited to get to Joel's talk, and then later on after Joel Caneco. But first, we just have a few sort of community items that we'd like to go over for this February 2024 edition of the meetup.
All right. Yes. So we have Lara Jobs here. If you have not heard about Lara Jobs before, it's great. If you're looking for some Laravel help, just make sure to check out the official Laravel job board. And that's open to any Laravel developers or anyone looking to add some Laravel developers to their team. Lots of Laravel opportunities there.
Looking for work or looking to hire? It's a great resource.
We also got Laravel News. If you haven't checked them out, if you never want to miss out on any Laravel news, be sure to take a look there. And they got some good stuff going on. And then for the Laravel podcast, there's a new podcast that actually went up today. So a recap of all the events from Laracon EU and a look ahead to Laravel 11. I already saw some stuff in the comments. So want to check out what's going on with Laravel 11, make sure to check them out. And we got a big event coming up very soon, actually. So Laracon India is coming up March 23rd and 24th, which is a massive Laravel event. Make sure to check them out at laracon.in for all the information. And then we also got Laracon US coming up as well in Dallas, Texas. So that's going to be later this year. Tickets are on sale now, so make sure to check them out at laracon.us. And a big thanks to Vehicle for hosting the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. And if you're in need of any development help, make sure to check them out. They have an awesome team of Laravel developers and other frameworks as well. And we have a new thing that's actually going to be happening starting this meetup. So we're going to keep the slide up for a couple seconds here, but if you scan this QR code, you can sign up for our contest. So in this contest, we are raffling away 2 JetBrains 1-year subscriptions to any of the JetBrains IDEs. So thank you to JetBrains for giving this out to the community. And so we'll do this at every meetup. We'll also put this slide up at the end of the meetup as well. So if you missed this here, no worries, but you could also check it out once we upload this YouTube video to our Laracon YouTube channel, and you can check it out there too. And
with that, we are into today's speakers. Like we said, we have 2 excellent speakers this month, and 2 speakers that are already well known to the Laravel community. So they don't need much of an introduction, but we'll do it anyway. So our first speaker this month is Joel Clermont. Joel, actually, I had the pleasure of hearing Joel speak at Laracon this past summer in Nashville. Gave a really great talk and a lot of great insights on some stuff to get you unstuck when you're debugging. Joel's also a partner in a consultancy, a web consultancy, specializing in Laravel work called No Compromises. He's also the co-host of a podcast by the same name, No Compromises. And here he is now. Hello, let's get you unmuted there, Joel. Hello, Joel. Can you hear us?
Hey, Joel. I'm doing all right.
All right. How you doing today? How's the weather in Milwaukee?
It's too nice to be inside doing this, but here we are. The sacrifices we make. And I didn't connect this to my Laracon US talk, but like the focus on debugging. Maybe that's my thing. Maybe I'm the Laravel debugging guy.
There you go. I mean, I think you've spent a lot of time in the trenches, so to speak, in Laravel applications and old PHP applications, and you see some things, you learn some things, right? So definitely your talk at Laracon US this past summer was very insightful. I thought there's a lot of really good little tidbits. I was thinking about debugging in general, and it's like there's tooling and stuff that you can put in place, like I think you're going to touch on today, but there's also, I feel like, a bit of an art form to it, or a bit of, you got to trust your gut and intuition a little bit. So yeah, some good insights I think you shared with how you approach debugging this past summer.
Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, so I can share what I've learned.
We all
have. Teach others,
Yeah.
Have all the failures and teach other people how not to make mistakes.
Great. So so your talk today, you're going to maybe give us some insight. I don't want to spoil too much, but just maybe give us some motivation to take our debugging a step further with some tooling and go beyond our, what I like to call DD, die and dump driven development, and use some tooling to help us maybe get further insight into our debugging.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you want to go ahead, maybe Joel, and share your screen. we will hand things off to you. If you have any issues, Margot and I will just be backstage, but the floor is yours. We'll be watching for questions in the chat if there's something that makes sense to introduce beforehand, but if not, we'll maybe save some questions towards the end.
All right.
Let's get your screen up there. All right. I can see Life Beyond DD.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are good to go. All right, Joel,
Awesome.
we'll hand it off to you, and we'll talk to you shortly.
Good luck.
All right.
Thank you. All right. So as was mentioned, we're going to be talking about, first of all, we're going to be talking about how awesome DD is. Let's just get that out of the way. But where are some times that maybe we need something more, and maybe we could get to the solution faster if we had other tools in our tool belt? So this idea, DD is all you need, is something I hear occasionally in the Laravel ecosystem. And I would even expand it. Like, we have other tools that are kind of DD adjacent or like similar in spirit, like the awesome Ray. I own a license to that. Like Herd has some functionality with collecting the output of DD. So like there's a lot of tooling. And that's really why I think DD is actually pretty good for most use cases. So like this is not a talk to try to convince you should never DD. Like that's not what this is about at all. But the fact that it's simple and powerful and it's right there and it's just like adding a line of code will make it the thing we reach for automatically. And so today is just kind of like opening your experience a little bit, or maybe you already know about Xdebug, which is the thing I'm going to talk about. And like you tried it 5 years ago and you just got like a stream of errors and you never got it working with PHPStorm, and you like messed up your PHP install and you had to buy a new computer and like it just, everything went sideways. So we're going to talk about like how to use it and how to set it up too. Try to demystify it a little bit. Maybe like one place to start in this discussion is kind of obvious, but like why do we use DD at all? And the reason is our code isn't doing what we want it to do. So we're trying to build a feature, we're trying to fix a bug, and we look at the code, like we read it, we're the human code interpreter, and it seems like it should be doing something different than what is actually happening when we make a request or we fill out that form or we run that command. And so DD is a way to kind of inject ourselves into the process. Like I want to, in the middle of this request, I want to see what this variable is. Like, is it true or is it false? And because if I'm expecting it to be true, but clearly it has to be false because this path is being taken in the code that I'm not expecting. So that's the point of DD, is to figure out what's going on, why our code isn't working. The same premise exists for this other tool, Xdebug. And so here's just like a little preview of the talk. First of all, what is it? Like if you've never used it or even heard of it, like it's going to sound kind of foreign. So we'll start there. How do you set it up? This can be challenging if you've done it in the past. Honestly, now it's gotten pretty easy. Like the Laravel ecosystem, especially with things like Sail and Herd, have made this just like there's less of a reason to not use it. Then we're going to dive into what can it do? What are the actual features? And then why would I use this? Like what are the use cases where maybe DD is not serving my needs? Maybe I can find the bug in my code faster by using this other tool. So I'm not watching the chat, but I'm just guessing like there's somebody out there thinking this. Why would I waste the time to learn how to use this? I just won't write bugs. And this is clearly a joke. And I happened to see this on Twitter yesterday, and I'm like, oh, it's perfect timing. I was going to try to come up with some other joke, but this guy did it for me. But the point is like, nobody tries to write bugs, but we do. It just happens. So this also acknowledges like there is a little bit of investment in not only setting up a tool, but learning how to use it. So there has to be some motivation. And that's what I hope this talk will provide. And I guess my last kind of like introductory remark is to just keep an open mind as we go through this. Just give it a chance. It kind of made me think about a recent trip my family took to Disney. And so I think it's at Epcot, there is this absolutely ridiculous ride. There's a Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster. And it's indoors, it's dark, it's loud, like your car is spinning. And I didn't know what to expect going into it. And I just like went along for the ride. When we got to the end, just like when you get to the end of this talk, you may have one of two reactions. So you might be like my kids and you might be like, that was awesome, let's do it again. Or you might be like me, which is like, man, I'm old. I don't know if I ever need to do that again. I think I need a nap. I just got spun so many directions. I need to calm down. So if you get to the end of this and you think Xdebug is awesome and you want to try it out, then great. If you don't, if you're going to stick with DD, my feelings aren't hurt. Like, that's fine. Like, I'm just saying, keep an open mind. Let's see what happens, and let's dive in. So that first question, what is Xdebug? Like when we talk about it, like what actually is this thing that we're using? So most simply, it's a PHP extension, right? So it's not part of PHP itself. It is something you have to install additionally into PHP. Now, you're probably already using quite a few PHP extensions, and you might not even think about it. You know, things that have to do with image manipulation or connecting to databases or talking to Redis, like all of these things to some extent. There might be parts of it that are in PHP core, but some of that functionality comes from an extension. Now, the reason you might not have thought about these extensions is because a lot of PHP development environments and even PHP production environments like Forge, they give you a lot of common extensions out of the box. And so you never maybe had to go install Redis because it just came set up for you on your server or on your local machine. Xdebug, though, probably is not in that camp. We'll look at one environment today where it does come set up for you, but a lot of times you have to install it. So there's a command line tool called Pecl, P-E-C-L, which is how you install the extension. So it's sort of like Composer is to PHP packages, Pecl is to PHP extensions. Xdebug provides a number of high-level features. So probably the one most people think of right away is step debugging. The ability to like pause a web request on whatever line you want and like look at all the variables, look at the call stack, like go forward or backward in time, change things like in the middle of an execution. Like, it's a pretty powerful feature. This is what we're going to talk about today. This is what we're going to demo. This is probably your primary motivation for wanting to use Xdebug, especially in comparison to a tool like DD. So, but that's where we start. It has other things though too, like nice error reporting. Now we're spoiled in Laravel. We never see like a bare PHP error. We have like a nice exception detail page that lets you click buttons to fix errors, and like it has a nicely formatted stack trace. But if you've been around PHP and you've worked outside of a framework where you don't have a nicety like that, what you used to see is black and white, exceptions with no stack traces. If you do a var dump, you get like the bare minimum of what you asked for. And so one thing that Xdebug adds is nicer error reporting. For us in Laravel, we probably don't care, but some of us work on projects that are not all Laravel. Maybe we're migrating an old project to Laravel. Maybe we're supporting an older site that's working just fine as is, and we don't have some of those nicer features. Xdebug might give you at least some better error reporting, and that's a nice feature to think about. Profiling. So this is the ability to measure what our code is doing in terms of performance, like the amount of time something takes, the amount of a total request, like what percentage of it is consumed by each particular function call, how many times something is called, how much memory it uses. So you can go really far in the weeds here to try to figure out what is running slow in your code. And generally, we don't do this, right? Like, oh, I know it's slow. I need a database index, or this must be the expensive API call. I'm going to try to cache that. But profiling is nice to sort of validate your assumptions, because maybe the thing you think is slow isn't really the thing that is slow. This is something that would answer that question definitively, and it's one of the main features of Xdebug. Code coverage. This is a nice fancy dashboard you can generate when you run your test suite. We all have tests, right? Like, okay, if you don't, then there should be a talk on test. But anyways, when you run your test suite, Xdebug is there in the background, and it's keeping track of like every line of your application code that was run. And then anything that was run, it's like, oh, you tested it. Anything that wasn't run, it's like, oh, you didn't test it. Now, it can lie a little bit because there's lines of code that you can run that really aren't being tested. Like the logic of them is not being tested. But this as a broad metric is very useful. At a minimum, it'll show you things that for sure don't have test coverage. Anything it says that does, you can kind of use your own judgment, look at the tests and judge the quality, but it's a useful tool. And this one, I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever used the tracing feature in Xdebug. At least if I did, I can't remember it, so I don't have a story to tell about it, but it's there. It will just spit out a ridiculously long log of every single function call and all the values passed in and all the values returned and any assignments. And there's probably a use case for this, but we're not going to talk about it anymore. Just know that it's there. All right, so let's get into the meat of the Xdebug setup. Now, I debated how to show this. To me, probably the strongest demonstration would be to do this live, but I decided I'm not that crazy. Trying to do a demo live that's talking to external servers and is compiling code. This is 30-minute talk, not going to happen. So what I did though, to keep myself honest here, is I set up a brand new Mac with nothing on it and use that as the test. Because sometimes, if you have your work machine that you've been using for 5 years and it's got everything kind of ready to go, trying to replicate something on that might be a little different. So anyways, I went to Amazon and they have Macs that you can spin up in the cloud. Fun fact, you know how Amazon bills by the minute? It's not true for Macs. Apparently there's something in Apple's license terms that it has to be a minimum of 24 hours. So I spent 24 hours to make this demo for you. So I hope you all appreciate it. But anyways, so this is a terminal in one of those pristine Macs up in the cloud. All I did was ran through the setup for Valet. So Valet, you have to have Homebrew, you have to have Composer, and then you have to have PHP. But that's all I did. I did whatever is the basic instructions in the Valet setup and the Homebrew setup and the Composer setup. I just did that. And we got to a point where if I run PHP-V, you can see I'm running the latest version of PHP 8.3. One thing you don't see on here is any mention of Xdebug. So that's important. If Xdebug was installed, there would be a line here, just like there's a line for Zend opcache. There would be a line for Xdebug. So it is not installed. So we have to install it. Here's that command I talked about earlier. Just one command, peckle install Xdebug. Now, you could specify a version of Xdebug. There's all sorts of flags and stuff you can pass. But honestly, this is really all you need to do. If you want the latest version of Xdebug, it will pick the latest version for the version of PHP that you have installed. So if we run this, you see all this code scrolling by, things are getting built, things are getting downloaded, things are getting linked. But at the end, it worked, right? So towards the bottom, we see build process completed successfully. And that last line right before my terminal prompt says extension Xdebug enabled in php.ini. Now that's interesting because most PECL extensions will not do that. Xdebug does it for you. And so at the top, I don't know if you can see my mouse when I'm arrowing here. I can't see my mouse. Oh, there it is. So there's even this note here because by default, I think further up in this scroll, PECL even tells you, oh, you should go add this to your PHP file. If you go do what it says, you'll get an error because then it'll try to load the extension twice. So anyways, a little bit confusing, but the thing to take away from this is it does the work for you. It adds the extension enabled to your relevant php.ini file. So now, if we go back to our terminal, run php-v, we see it right there with Xdebug version 3.3.1. So let's pause for a second because it's important to remember PHP kind of has two personalities. There's the command line PHP binary that you run when you're doing a command like this. But then there's this other PHP thing that serves web requests through a web server. And so in a typical Valet setup like I'm using here, that is called PHP FPM. And to make it even more confusing, those two different PHPs can actually have different configurations. So why do I bring that up? Because you could have output here at the command line that shows Xdebug is there. Everything is good. But now, if we try to use it in a web request, so what I've done up here, again, I hope you can see the arrow, is just a simple like closure-based route to spit out Xdebug info. It's just like a debug screen, sort of like PHP info is for PHP. Xdebug info is for Xdebug. But look at the error. Undefined function. That means Xdebug is not set up in PHP. So what happened? Am I going to go down this rabbit hole? I'm going to Google something and I'm going to go to Stack Overflow, and there's going to be like a pasted reply from ChatGPT, which tells me to edit this PHP file that doesn't even exist on my system. And I'm just going to give up on all this. All right, let's take a breath. We don't have to do any of that. Peckle did not lie to us. It did enable the extension. We just didn't restart PHP. So this is something else to remember. Like the PHP command line, every time I type a command, it's spinning up PHP, stopping it. So any configuration changes will immediately take effect at the command line. But that PHP FPM and other types of long-running web-based processes, those don't restart unless I tell them to restart, right? So this is some place you could like go down this huge rabbit hole and like mess around with your system and lose an hour of your life. And all you had to do was restart PHP. So I like calling this out because it's important as a general debugging principle. You kind of have to understand like the principles of how things work and like pause and think, oh, yeah, that's right. The web process is still running. I probably have to restart that for this configuration change to take effect after I install this PHP extension. So just a little bit of a side point, but I'm sure this has tripped up somebody. And I just wanted to call it out because you're not alone. So anyways, after we restart PHP, there it is. We got our Xdebug info screen. Now let's look at this for a minute. Those features we kind of ran through earlier are here in this table, but what you'll notice is features can be enabled or disabled. And this is for performance reasons, like the code coverage makes things run really slow. Like if you've ever run your test suite with coverage versus without, you felt the difference in speed. And so Xdebug makes you explicitly say, what features within my tool set do you want to enable? Like which ones are you actually interested in? And so right now, by default, if we don't specify a mode, the only thing it enables are the development helpers. Like those pretty error messages, the nicer var dump output. That's not what we're interested in. We want that step debugger to be enabled because that's why we're installing Xdebug today, presumably. So how do we do that? Well, we do have to edit a PHP INI file. And again, this is a opportunity to get lost a little bit. So what you can do, this is one way. You can use PHP-ini. You could look at PHP info output, but there are different ways of finding out like which files is my version of PHP using for configuration. So once you find that, you edit it. And kind of a clue that I found the right one is if you look at the bottom half of this, line 1, that Zend extension, that's the thing that turns Xdebug on. That was added when I did Peckle install Xdebug. It's that second line that we're about to add, right? So I have to tell it which mode, xdebug.mode equals debug. And the documentation tells you what all the different flags are that you can put in here to turn features on. Once we do that, of course, we're going to restart PHP, right? We're going to remember to restart Valet, restart PHP. Then when we come back here, now the step debugger is enabled. The development helpers are turned off. You can turn on more than one feature. You just kind of separated them, but I don't really need that when I'm in Laravel. So I just enabled the debugger. Now we can go into our editor. This is a screenshot of PHPStorm. And you can set a breakpoint by clicking on a line number. You can turn on you have to tell your editor to listen for a PHP debug connection. So the little bug with a red X means it's not listening. When I click it, now I get the screen on the bottom where it shows the green bug with like an antenna signal coming out of his head or something, but it's green. So green is good. That means that it's listening. That little pop-up, I took that in the screenshot because if you're setting this up for the first time, you'll see that. And PHPStorm offers a tool where if it's not set up right, you can run this validate debugger, which I guess is kind of like debugging the debugger. But anyways, it'll tell you, it looks at your PHP INI and it looks at your Xdebug and it kind of figures out what you might have wrong. We're not going to run into that because this is just going to work, right? We're not worried, but that's what that is. I thought I would share it. The next thing to understand is that everything we've done, including setting the breakpoint and turning on the debug listen in PHPStorm, that's not enough for the breakpoint to actually be hit in our editor. We have to tell on a per request basis that we actually want to debug this request. And again, that's for reasons of performance too. You know, if you might have a bunch of breakpoints set and you don't necessarily want to hit them. So the ability on a per request basis to turn it on or off is a good thing. The main way to do that is through an environment variable. You can also do it through a cookie. Like there's different browser extensions for Safari, Chrome, Firefox, whatever, that all they do is like you click a button in your extension toolbar that sets a cookie on the request, and then you click it again to turn it off. But Xdebug also lets us just inject it into the request. I can do it in a GET or a POST. And so that's what I'm doing here. Like if you're just playing around with this is probably the easiest way to get started. If it becomes more of your daily workflow, then you might want to look at a browser extension or some other tooling to make it easier to turn on or off without having to mess with URLs. But once we turn that on and I hit enter and I submit this request in my browser, again, because this is the first time I'm doing it, PHPStorm will pop up this dialog on the left and it will say incoming connection, because technically this is a network connection between the Xdebug protocol and our editor. And so you can even do this remotely. But you know, anytime a network connection is involved, you probably want to make sure it was expected. And so that's what this is showing. Like, do you want to accept this connection? Yes, we want to accept it. Now on the right, it actually will break first. By default, it'll break first on the server.php in Valet, because even though Valet is sort of like behaving as our web server, it is also PHP code. And so that's where it will start by default. If we just navigate past that, now it'll hit our little breakpoint that we set on line 17 and all those goodies at the bottom. You see all that stuff light up on the bottom of the screen. We have the full call stack, like all the different paths it took through the framework to get to our web.php file. On the right, we have all sorts of things that we can expand. And if we were inside a controller that had a form request and had models, like all of that stuff would be in scope and we could play around with it. And we'll look at some of that in our demo later. All right, so that's setting it up on a Mac with Valet with PHPStorm. So what's the opposite of that? I don't know. I just came up with this. I'm on Windows and I'm using Laravel Sail and I'm in VSCode. Like, can we still use Xdebug? Absolutely. So Xdebug is sort of agnostic to your operating system, your PHP development environment, and your editor. Like, there's a combination of those things that won't work, but I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find it. So this is just to highlight. I'm not gonna spend another 10 minutes on how to set this up, but just to make the point, whatever you're using, whatever operating system, version of PHP, and editor, you probably can do everything I'm going to show you today. So one cool thing about Laravel Sail is it does come with Xdebug enabled out of the box. You don't have to PECL install anything. And you don't even have to edit PHP INI files. It surfaces it as an env setting. So I can just go into my .env and I can set the Sail Xdebug mode and I can set debug. And now, again, I have to restart Sail after I make this change, but I don't have to dig into all those files. So it's a lot easier in that regard. VSCode does not have PHP debugging support out of the box, but there is this extension. When I looked at this screenshot, almost 11 million installs and 132 reviews. That seems kind of depressing if I'm the extension author here. But anyways, people are very unappreciative, but apparently they like installing it. You can add to it and maybe, you know what, leave a review, help somebody out, make them happy. But you have to install this extension. And then once you do, you know, in fact, this is from the extension screen page, like you can set the breakpoints and it looks different than what I was showing you in PHPStorm and what I will show you in the demo later, which will also be in PHPStorm. but all the same basic functionality is there. It's just in a little different spot with maybe a different UI, different feature set, but the core, step debugging, breakpoints, inspecting variables, changing things, you can do all of that regardless of your editor. All right, so should we do a demo? Like I've just been showing you screenshots. I don't know how fun that is, but let's give it a shot here. All right, so I have a Laravel app running. I just did Laravel new. It's just running the demo page. If I go over to my editor, so I have a slash debug route that's just going to this demo controller, and this is like very contrived, right? So this is not typical code, but it's just enough to kind of demonstrate what Xdebug can do and maybe why you would use it in place of DD in certain scenarios. So let's set a breakpoint here. So yeah, again, I just setting up an array. We're going to loop over it. You're probably thinking like, oh, you should use like a collection and like map it. And like, that's not the point of this. The point of this is to show Xdebug. All right. So just get that out of there. So let's go to debug. And if I do this now, okay, so I'm running the request. You did not expect this. So this is the way I'm showing that we have a bug in our code. Maybe we were expecting that we would have 3 X's and 3 Y's and 3 A's and 3 B's, but we're instead getting this weird like error message in our array. All right, so it didn't hit my breakpoint either. Did you notice that? Because I didn't do this Xdebug session. The value doesn't matter. Like I can put whatever I want in there. By default, it's just looking for something in there. Now when I run this, you can see, oh, my request isn't finishing, because if I come over here I am, I'm in Valet. And when I said, skip ahead, kind of like got VCR buttons. Remember VCRs? Or DVDs? I don't know. But you can play. So when I hit play, it'll go past this and it'll go all the way until it gets to a breakpoint that I set. So there's my breakpoint that I set. We're in our demo controller. We're in here. So what is going on here that is worth calling out? So first of all, look at all of the inline data that shows up. So again, this is kind of a dumb example because it's literally showing the literal output of what's there. But think if you had a form request and you validated it and you were like extracting pieces of that and manipulating it. Every step along the way, it would show this inline result of what's happening. And you can even go deeper and inspect some of these if these were more complex objects. So that's interesting. We also down here have everything that's in scope. I could go look, there's that get query string I stuck in the URL. I can go backwards. This is kind of a cool way of even learning how Laravel works. Is like, where does it all start? I mean, it starts server PHP, then index, and it goes through all of this stuff. But unless you're working on the framework or you've done a lot of DDs in your vendor folder, you probably don't know the path that this takes. But like, this is a nice tool for learning how Laravel works too. But and at every point along the way, I can see and inspect what was happening at that point in time. So you kind of get this like time travel ability. But let's go back to where we are. So here we have the variables that are in scope. Now I have some symbols here to step, and I can do different types of steps. So like the line I'm broken on right now is going to make a function call. So if I want to continue debugging into whatever that function call is doing, I would use step into. But maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I just want to I want to stay in this loop here. I can do step over. So if I click step over, oh, so anything that changes is a different color too. See how it changed to yellow? So now I can see, okay, the value is now Y I'm about to process. And my first result, you did not expect this. Well, that's weird. Okay, now we got to step into, we got to see what's happening here. So let's step into this. All right. So again, very contrived code. Don't write anything like this ever. But like maybe the intent was, if you look at my data, like, oh, if it's a number, I don't want to triple it. I just want to triple the strings that are in here. And this is like the ham-fisted way I came up with doing that, which is like, oh, just say if it's greater than 0, because if it's a string, Like a string cast to an integer is 0, I guess, unless it has a number in it. And like, so this is why you don't write code like this. But here's where our bug is. So value y, that shouldn't be greater than 0, right? Like, let me show you another cool feature. I can evaluate code in real time here. So I can say int value. And when I hit enter, it shows me, well, that's 0. So why, if I say int value greater than 0, yeah, that's false. Like, what is happening here? Well, I think it was with PHP 8, when you compare strings and ints, they flipped the behavior. It's for security reasons. It was a good thing. But instead of casting the string to an int, it casts the int to a string. So actually what's happening is this, right? And value, oh, I got to take this cast off. That is true, because if you think about it, the number 0 as a character in terms of like how those codes evaluate to, or how those strings evaluate to codes, 0 comes after the alphabet. Now, if I said, is my value greater than Z? No, it's not greater than 0, Z. I think I said that backwards. The numbers come before the letters. Anyways, the point is, this is clearly not what we intended when we wrote this code. And I think you'd have to do quite a few DDs to figure this out. And so by being able to step into it, kind of see what's happening step by step, and being able to, like, let's just experiment. Let's run some code. Let's change some things. In fact, it's probably not useful for this example, but I can even come in here and I can say set value. So I could make this y a 0. Like, I could change it to something else in real time. I'm still in the middle of my request, and I can now resume, right? I can still keep doing what I'm doing and watching stuff happen. So it's a contrived demo, but it really demonstrates some of the cool things you can do with it. And I'll be honest, I am just scratching the surface. Just a couple quick things to show. You can do things like a conditional breakpoint. So maybe you've done this with DD, where it's something is happening inside a loop like this, and it's only happening on like the 5th iteration of the loop. Well, if I DD in the first iteration of the loop, I'll never get to the 5th, so I can't see what it's doing. So I don't know, maybe you've done this, I've done it. You put like an if statement around your DD, and like now you're really changing your code to try to debug it. Here, I could just say, I only want to break if the value is maybe like is int value, right? So if I set this and I run my debugger, the first 2 loops, it's not going to break because those are strings. X and Y are strings. When it gets to 2, now it breaks. So I can get very specific with where I want the breakpoint to evaluate. You can do it like if I click this more button, you can do stuff like, I only want to hit it 1 time and then I want you to disable it. Or I want you to hit it once and then disable it until like some other exception is thrown or some other named breakpoint. Like, you can go nuts with this. You can do logging. That's another place where I see DD gets a little messy, is that you start adding more and more things to it just to try to figure out what's going on. You can do logging from breakpoints and not have it stop at all. So when you get to the end, it'll just be a bunch of output in the Xdebug window that you can inspect. So anyways, that's my rough and tumble demo. If I resume this, one other thing just to point out, if I go back here, your web server is only going to wait so long for the response to come back. And most times it's going to just give up like this, but that's okay. Like when we start debugging, we're really in the midst of trying to figure out what's going on. At that point, we know the request isn't going to finish. You could change your Nginx config to allow a much longer timeout, but I don't really think you need to do that. Just calling it out in case you get surprised why that happens. Because I know you're going to try this, right? I can feel like at least one person is going to try this after today. All right. Anyways, so I guess let's just wrap this up. What do you think about this? Like, is this something that's interesting or compelling? Was there anything that you thought, oh, I just did a DD session yesterday that maybe this would have gotten me to the solution faster? Or are you a rebel? Are you like, I'm going to DD even harder now, Joel? I'm not doing Xdebug. well, that's fine. You know, you can get a DD tattoo. I'll respect that. That's okay. But I tried. It's all good. Either way, just remember to step debugging is just one feature. I think maybe code coverage would probably be the second one that I'd recommend as a useful thing to have in your tool belt. So your homework is, unless you're that complete rebel, just to try this out, even just to prove to yourself that you can set it up and you're not going to break everything in your development environment. If you get stuck, I can try to help you. I do have to work a job, but send me a message on Twitter and I'll see what I can do. The other thing too, I guess let's do a shameless plug. I have this website, masteringlaravel.io. In the upper right, there's an option, need help. And so like there's a contact form. There's a way to set up ways to pair with me or my partner, Aaron. So that's available. And as long as this website is up, there's a really awesome newsletter that we write with some Laravel tips. And the premise is kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning, like just going below the surface and understanding how things work, but doing it really quickly. So like every email is 2 minutes or less. That's my promise to you. So sign up for that if that sounds interesting. The podcast that was mentioned at the beginning too in my introduction is at the bottom of this page. We host it on Transistor, and recently they awarded us a badge for having downloads in 150 countries, which sounds great. Like, that's awesome. I didn't know there were that many countries, but it made me think, like, what are the countries that haven't downloaded it? Like, where do I need to spread the word of our podcast? And we're on the Worldwide Meetup, so this might be my chance. So if you're in Greenland, if you're in, what else did I have? Turkmenistan, Costa Rica, or Malawi, you should go download this, because like that would just, maybe there's another badge. Maybe we'll get to 200. I don't know what the upper limit is there. But anyways, that's enough shameless plugs. I'm hopeful that this was interesting, that you learned something, and that you're willing to give it a try. I'll pause now because I think we're going to have an opportunity to do some questions.
Hello, Joel. Thank you. That was excellent.
Awesome.
I'm getting some heavy thunder here. I hope my internet and electricity hold up. But that was great. That was definitely you have a very nice demeanor to your presentation, and you made something what feels as scary as getting Xdebug set up seem like a very easy task, right?
Okay.
I do think it's probably a little bit like, you see someone, make something on TV or something. It's a lot easier when you go to try it. But I think definitely the one thing that resonated with me was I feel spoiled, but it's a good thing in a way that a lot of this stuff is so relatively easy now. I use, Laravel Sail personally a lot and PHPStorm. So a lot of that stuff kind of works for you. I think it would be a lot harder in a different environment, maybe using a different editor, Vim, to get some of these things set up. So that
awesome. Reminds me, I was going to mention Vim, and I was going to specifically say I'm not covering it, because if you're smart enough to use Vim, you can figure this out on your own.
Yes. I think that is probably very.
One other thought too, like a plug for Herd Pro, which I think was just announced. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to try it. But it has a really cool thing that it will only enable the debugger if you have a breakpoint set. So some of that stuff I showed about like having to turn it on and off, or like just suffer with the overhead, like they solved that. So there's a plug.
Actually, I did have a question about that. Yeah. The old joke again about turn it off and on again is often a solution. A few times you talked about, and you were running like Valet restart, but under the hood, is that doing like a PHP FPM restart? Yeah. Is that what that's doing? That's the key thing there that you need to make sure you do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're not using Valet, like with Sail, if you restart Sail, it's restarting the Docker container. But the thing you actually need to do is just restart the PHP FPM process.
And I did. I know you showed the breakpoint debugging there in PHPStorm more extensively. I did wonder on the VSCode side. Well, one really nice things I like in PHPStorm was the thing you showed with the conditional breakpoints.
Yep.
Does that exist in VSCode land as well?
Yeah, I only played with it enough to make sure I knew how it worked, and it did have conditional breakpoints. I don't think it has some of the more complex scenarios, like hit this once and then only hit it a second time if this other thing happens. Like PHPStorm goes nuts with that. And honestly, I don't use those features that much, but yeah, I think conditional breakpoints are definitely there.
Yeah, it's nice to know they're there. Awesome. Cool. Looking at the chat, I think Margaret, we have some questions coming from the chat. Do we have anything here we wanted to ask Joel from the chat?
Yeah, we definitely do. Here, let me throw this up on the screen. Okay, so from Padelton 0815. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But what he says is, I love Xdebug locally. But what about Xdebug with remote server? We have often very complex and big systems databases where we would love to have debug at the server. What can you say about this, Joel?
I could say my personal opinion, do not run this in production. Not only do you have the overhead of doing it, but there are ports you would have to open. And if you're very sophisticated and know how to only open those like on a VPN or something like that, it might be worth doing. I would probably spend my energy making a way to reproduce these things, like at least in a staging environment, right? So in staging environment, to be able to reproduce this, or even better locally. But yeah, like I run into things where it would be nice to have remote debugging, and Xdebug absolutely can do it. Like there's not a limitation as far as the tool is concerned, but I would strongly recommend against turning this on in a production environment.
All right, thank you.
Definitely, there's a performance overhead too there as well.
Yeah.
Yep. There was another question. I don't know if you can find it there, Margot, but it was in general, it was asking about installing Xdebug.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question was, can you install Xdebug with Composer? Which I think the short answer to that is it's an extension versus a package, right? So it's not available in Composer. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. Like you cannot. I don't think there's a way to install a PHP extension with Composer. But what you can do, and what you probably should do, not for Xdebug, but like you can say Composer require Redis, ext/Redis, and it tells your Composer that this is a requirement. So if you go to like Composer install on a server that doesn't have the Redis extension enabled, it'll fail as a platform requirement failure. So you could do that with Xdebug, but I don't know of a way to install. You have to use Peckle, I think, to install the extension.
That would add an entry to your Composer JSON file, right?
Yeah,
To say this
exactly.
is required for this. I guess maybe though, are there ways to install Xdebug not using Peckle? Maybe that's.
I mean, you could always compile from source. I don't. I've only ever done it with Peckle, but yeah, theoretically, what Peckle is doing for you is sort of like with Homebrew. Like you say brew install PHP. Like you could download PHP source code and run the make files and do all that yourself. You could do the same thing. You could download the source to the Peckle extension and do it yourself. And you might have to in some very weird scenarios, but no, I've never had to do it. So if there's a way to do it, I'm not the guy to tell you, because I've not ever strayed outside of Peckle.
Absolutely. Okay, great. There's another question I see in the chat, and maybe this is a PHPStorm specific question, but if you have a bunch of breakpoints turned on and you want to turn them off, is there an easy way to do that?
Yeah. I'll speak from the PHPStorm perspective. There's a breakpoint manager where you can see across your whole project, because you might have breakpoints set in vendor code and like controllers and like all over the place. You can see them all, and like there's a select all, deselect all, like the things that you might expect. It has ways of doing it as a mass assignment.
That's another thing you mentioned that reminded me of. I've definitely regrettably done that thing you mentioned of putting if statements, maybe even in vendor code from time to time.
Yep.
I guess one of the other advantages of breakpoint debugging is being able to, if you need to, step through that vendor code to figure out how that's interacting with your domain code as well, right? So that's
the first time I used Laravel. Like this is Laravel 4 days. I was coming from Zen framework, so that tells you a little bit about my state of mind. But that's how I learned Laravel. Like part of how I evaluated it was I just debugged through a whole request, and it's a lot. Like it's probably not the recommended way to start with a framework, but for me, it was a way to get up to speed with it. So yeah, it's a neat learning tool, I think, as well.
Absolutely, I find get a lot of similar insights too, trying to write tests around code that have tests already, right? And I think probably the common thing in there is it really forces you to kind of dig through the code and work through it and figure out at a deeper level what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Do we have any other questions you see there in the chat, Margot?
In the chat, I'm looking through. I haven't seen any other ones. There's the other question. I don't know if it's already been. Yeah, browsers are looking.
Yeah, and I did have the general question, which I think you kind of touched on, Joel, and I think that was the takeaway. Is like there are situations where I think just dropping a DD in the code is pretty easy and it gets you where you need to be, right? But
absolutely,
you touched on using conditional breakpoints and that idea of might have code that's executed numerous times in a request. I think that's where the breakpoint debugging can really shine, and those are the situations that you could probably get to your solution faster than you would have otherwise using DD driven development, so to speak. Can you is there any, not that you have to share specifics, but is there any particular situations you can think of that like the breakpoint debugging really helped you, or like you ever ran into situations where you were running into a wall with DD driven development, and then as soon as you flip to using Xdebug, you got to the solution?
I can share an experience. It was I was pairing with somebody, and it was a test, and we were testing an artisan command, and what they were doing, which seemed like a totally reasonable thing to do, is they would be like result equals this arrow call the command assert okay blah blah blah, and then they would make like a few more assertions after the fact. And it was failing, and I could not understand why, because if we ran the command directly, it was fine. But what we put the step debugger on there, and what we figured out is in the test environment, when you use the helper to run an artisan command, it doesn't actually run it. And I understand why now that I dug into it. So it can make assertions like that has to happen later, but it was doing this weird thing where it would wait for the test essentially to start like deconstructing the object, and that actually ran it. So by assigning it to a variable, like we changed the fact that now the command wasn't even running inside of our test. And like I only found that out, I guess I could have, it's not in the documentation as far as I could tell. I could have just looked at the source code, but step debugging got us right to that thing. And I'm like, oh, I learned something new today.
Yeah. And again, more insight gained as to how things work under the hood. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think maybe one more question here. Put this one up. I saw it just come into the chat. The question was, can you use it with the WebSockets official package? So I think maybe this might be speaking to is there's been a recent announcement of a new package in the Laravel ecosystem called Laravel Reverb. It's a first-party sort of web server that you can use with your application to serve up WebSockets. I don't know if you have any insight to this at this point, Joel, as to whether this would be possible, but it's PHP code, so...
Yeah, I guess my question there is, I would assume I haven't used Reverb, or even looked at it, but I would assume it's running under a different PHP process, maybe even on a different server than your web request. So I suppose you could probably, if that version of PHP was set up with Xdebug, I just don't know how you'd set a breakpoint easily, because it's not like the code is open in an editor. There's like a whole command line debug tool. You'd probably have to use something like that, but it's very rare that I've used that. So I think that would be a trickier scenario.
Definitely.
At least for the inside the WebSocket server, like the code that emits the event, whatever, that'd be fine. No problem there.
Great. I'm sure there'll be more to come as Laravel Reverb gets released and used. Awesome. Was there any other questions that you can see, Margaret?
No, I don't see any right now, but what we can do, just for timing, what we could do is collect them as we go on and have Caneco ready for his talk, and then we can ask some more questions at the end. That's cool.
All right. Well, I think, Joel, did you have anything else you want to touch on before we let you go here?
No, thanks for hearing me out. That's all I got to say.
Oh, that was great. Thank you very much for sharing all your insights. As always, very well presented, very insightful, and thank you, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Joel. All right, so for our next speaker, so he is an amazing contributor to the Laravel community and had a huge role in supporting Laracon EU by hosting and organizing a lot of the event. And he's here today to share some of his awesome experiences in Laravel space. So all the way from Lisbon, Portugal, here is Caneco. Welcome, Caneco. How are you doing?
Unmute you there, Caneco.
Oh, we got you muted.
Unmute.
There we go.
Yeah, back in COVID. So very nervous, but
you look
it. Let's do it.
You're gonna crush it.
Yeah, exactly. At least you don't have the thunderstorms and the weather going on over here in Canada. How's the weather in Lisbon right now?
Not sunny.
No.
And it's nothing very usual in Portugal, because in Portugal we have pretty much all sunny every day. But yeah, no sun today. From the past 2 days, it's sort of like depression is happening.
All the sunshine is going to be in the talk that you give here, Caneco. I can feel it. I can see you sharing your screen. Would you like me to pull up your slides here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
So
All right.
hopefully you can hear my screen, see my
I can
screen.
see your screen. Hopefully we'll hear it shortly. All right, so I think we're good. Did you need anything from Margaret or myself, Kaneko? If you want,
No,
I know you
not
don't
at
have to-
all.
if
Just
you want a code word, if you get in trouble, whatever that is,
banana peel.
banana peel. I love it.
Banana peel.
Okay.
All right, we're
That's
Margaret and I are
That eject button
my
as soon
safe
as
word.
you hear it. So no worries.
Margaret and I are going to step
Okay.
off stage, and we'll do your thing,
Hopefully
and we'll.
you
chat.
hear something.
Yes,
We did. Yes.
I heard a woohoo.
Sing. I heard
Sounds like Homer Simpson to me. All right,
Yeah,
we'll talk to you
it's
shortly,
working.
Kaneko. Take it away. It's all yours.
Good
Okay.
luck.
Thank you. See you in a bit. So you can see my screen and you can hear my screen. What about me? Like Margaret said, I'm from Portugal, land of the Cristiano Ronaldo, and I'm working at Medicare as a full stack developer. That's me. That's Caneco. That's my usual Caneco face. That stupid face that I do every single photo, but get used to it. And follow me up on Twitter on that. The link was a little bit short, so I put it at the x.com/Caneco. So follow me there. So why did I prepare this talk? Why? This talk is going to be pretty much like a story time. So it all started with my mom, and no, that is going to take a little bit longer. So let's fast forward to 2010. I had my first job as a web designer. That's what we called the web developers at that time. So I used to work a lot with Flash, but not this Flash. The Flash that make all the websites fancy and animated, add sounds or whatever. So I'm from that age, and since high school, I did a lot of artworks. I always used to do design. Sorry, I need to take this off. Sorry. So I used to do a lot of design, and this is some of my regular designs that I did back in the time. And Flash was my number one tool to do it. But out of the blue, pretty much around that time, yeah, Apple just cut loose with the bringing of the new iPad, the new iPad. They said right away, no, there's no Flash running in. So Apple decided to kill it. And Flash was really sad, but yeah, time to move on into HTML and CSS and the other languages. So a little bit fast forward to 2012, I discovered PHP. So I discovered that I can include required files, and that not everything needs to be a single file, so I can actually split away code as it is. So as usual, I created my own framework because who never? When you create your own framework, you are a master of the world. You can tinker in changing everything, but eventually all those changes just come up with a big baggage, and it wasn't real far away when I started looking for something else. So I discovered Laravel around the time. It was easy to read, easy to code. Still today, it's still true enjoyable times to code PHP. But I will never forget my first version. Yeah, Laravel 3. So I don't know if you know it, but with this version, there was no composer. There was no spatsy packages whatsoever. So every package that you want to get into your application, you need to actually copy paste everything. So dark times back in the day. So as everyone single of you, you already been done this in the past. So Laravel everything. You were becoming a true evangelist of the Laravel in preaching all the ways of Laravel in every project. We've been there, so no worry. Fast forward to 2013, I discovered that was actually some sort of gathering that the people that code with Laravel, they all gather around and talk about Laravel packages, new stuff that come in into the framework, and people actually want to get joined together and to talk and share their experience with Laravel. So, and also I discovered the community. The community at the time was Daily Ruiz, Jeffrey Way, Sean McCool, a lot of the OGs back in the day, but I stood still and just be a watcher. I just watched all the community just over the top with enthusiasm and sharing packages, creating stuff, sharing knowledge. And but to be honest, I was at the time just a watcher. So around this period from 2013 and 2016, I was just pretty much coding and learning until this happened. So someone just messaged me. I don't know if you recognize him from this really old photo, but that's Nuno Maduro. We just messaged me. So I may need your help. I just said, tell me what's happening. So he just asked me, if you only have time, can you do me a logo? So I was, me? I maybe Nuno remembers the days that I do some design because we know each other from long time ago since university years. So he might just remember that I actually do some sort of design, but actually I do some code, but yeah, I can do some design. So out of the blue, I just created my very first logo for a Laravel thing that was for Laravel 0. And so out of the blue, it was Laravel 0. Then I did the logo for Collision. Then I did for PHP Insights. And that keep me on pushing and pulling into the community. So I turned to be more active and more present. And not only I just wanted to create some designs, I wanted to actually get together with the community, the Portuguese community, my fellow memberships that are using Laravel. So I started the very first, I guess, a Laravel meetup in Portugal. So I created the Laravel Lisbon, and this is a really old photo. It was the first gang that all joined it together in Lisbon for speaking about Laravel. And I don't know if you can see him properly, but in the back in the TV, that's actually Matt Stafford. He kindly joined in remotely and just speak a little bit with us and do a Q&A. But it was this moment, this initial gathering that rippled away. And this ripple that getting together, it's what I call like connecting artisans, getting us into the momentum and propel to create the Laravel Live Portugal. So you can see here, that's me, that's Taylor, because we invited them for the first episode to do like a quick Q&A. You got Quetzi, you got Nuno as well, you have Patricio, Pustiga, and Borges. The whole pack for the Laravel Live Portugal, the whole team that started this. And it was pretty fun this moment because I just reached my pretty much near my home and I just opened the computer because I was on the bus. I could not be during the full live, and I just went through a McDonald's, just get into their Wi-Fi, pull it in. Taylor out of the blue, everyone was over static. They actually thought that they were pranked at the moment. Someone just for Zoom bombed the meetup with a Taylor background. But yeah, it was really fun this moment. Fast forward to 2019. Yeah, my personal life at this time flipped away. So more to focus on my family interests, we decided to move on from Lisbon and decided to get back to Fatima. That's currently what I'm living. And even still, I'm still working in Lisbon. And so at that initial time, I was doing like a 2-hour commute every single day, going from Fatima to Lisbon and head back another 2 hour back to home. So I actually had time to kill. And I still remember all the fun that I had for making the logos for Nuno. So I wonder, what if I actually can do something different? So around the Oktoberfest, I thought about doing something different. Why not, instead of making a PR for adding a comma or switching up something on the README just to get the t-shirt, because back in the day you get a t-shirt for doing the Hacktoberfest. So why not instead I do a logo for your project, your package? So it was a simple deal. Just reply with your repo, I'll make the logo and I'll PR it. No worry. So didn't have like pretty following base, so my Twitter out of the blue just exploded, and I had a lot of fun. And yeah, I truly remember and care those moments that we actually do some stuff just for the fun of it, instead of doing something just to gain profit or whatever. So on Oktoberfest, I actually did over 30 logos. So pretty much doing the simple math, one logo a day. So I did a lot of logos, and here's some of them really quick. Some of them actually is still used today. Laravel PHP is one of them. Postwoman actually still has the same logo, and I did a lot of fun. And that experience of doing a lot of logos actually ripple away into, yeah, Mr. Ripple himself. Because I don't know if you know it, Michael is doing a terrific job on preaching the ripple effect of every single stuff that I do in the past can ripple on away into something greater. So out of the blue, Michael just messaged me. A well-known community member just messaged me about something, and he just asked me, "Oh, do you want to make the new logo for the North Meets Out podcast?" That's the podcast that Michael and Jacob Bennett runs along with the Laravel News podcast. And as far as I remember, this is actually my true answer to them. Yeah, I send a GIF. But yeah, I was over the top ecstatic, surprised, to be honest, with what the heck, why did he pick me? So I said yes, obviously. So this was their old logo, and I turned that into the fresh logo, the same logo that 6 years later you can still see on their podcast. And to be honest, so far is one of my greatest rebranding that I did so far, to be honest. So after years of being active and participant in the community, and I wanted to say the wise words of Aaron Francis. Uh, Put yourself out there, and sharing what you do will increase your luck. And that actually happened. Remember Laracon, the thing that I really wanted, I just discovered, and I really want to be there and be a speaker at the time, but I was always watching because, yeah, I got the opportunity actually to be a speaker at Laracon. So again, that's when I got the invitation. I was pretty much like this. It was my first time speaking at Laracon with this many amount of speakers, and it was the first time that I actually meet in person a lot of community members. I mean, Christoph, I met him for the first time. I met Marcel. I met Nuno Nuno, I already know him, so no, don't care. No problem. Funny story. Mr. Christoph, I met him at Laracon, on this Laracon in Madrid. I just reached the hotel. I was nervous because it was my first time meeting everyone. And I went to the hotel to place my bag, and I ran into Christoph because I met him instantly because of the hat. And he recognized me instantly because of the bald. That's what it is what it is. And I was just so eager. Oh, it's Christoph Rumpel. Oh, can you wait for me? And let's get around, let's speak, have a selfie. And no, I need to run too. Let's meet later. And I was, okay. But Christoph, if you're there in the chat, we already discussed this many times. No, no hard feelings. It was still one of the best buddies that you can ever met. It was just a confusion of time or whatever. But yeah, I needed to share this story. Also, another community member well known that I was really surprised to meet him in person. And haters will say that this is Photoshop, but apparently Mr. Freik is a big fan of me since then. I don't know, because he just appeared out of the blue with the Caneco t-shirt. Yeah, some haters will say it's Photoshop, but whatever. So this is me at that Laracon, my very first time speaking at a Laracon. I was talking about Tailwind CSS, and it was 2019. I was preaching about how utility first CSS is good for you, and it's time to move on from the classes and all the bundling and whatever. And this is the full lot, the full attendees. Sorry, I'm a little bit. This is the picture of all the attendees at the conference. But I don't know if you can notice, but yeah, imagine me first time speaking about Tailwind CSS and having who else than Adam Wadan at the conference. And I was, yeah, no pressure whatsoever. Even Christoph was, no pressure, dude, you can do this. Moving on, brace myself. So I had a blast at Madrid at that Laracon. It was an incredible experience, and out of the blue, I did it again. So they invited me to be a speaker again in Amsterdam, this time at the same year. It was super dupe. I was very nervous, pretty much like I am here at this time. I don't know why. And at that conference, my subject was the art of form validation, and my whole presentation was regarding the Karate Kid theme. So I just step into the stage with a Karate Gi, with a Laravel belt, having the 6 because it was the Laravel 6 release at the arm. So at a blast at the time. So it was a surprising year. And fast forward to 2020. And I just thought dude, this year was incredible. Let's do this. Let's keep on this going, and let's making 2020 even better. But yeah, a wild COVID appeared out of the blue. So you must remember, right? COVID times, where masks became a normal thing, where everything stopped, everyone was sent home, and our streets was pretty much like this. Really sad moments, and all the in-person gatherings was restricted. So no Laracons, no conferences, no meetups, everything was canceled. So it was a pretty weird year, and where online become normal things. So Zoom calls, sentences like "you're on mute" become pretty regular on every day. So the conferences, what they started to make online events. So because we community want to be together, even now in online, like you can see at this time, at this very moment. So I also had the opportunity to be an online speaker in an online conference, where I actually talk at this time about logo design. And but not only be a speaker, I will always like to do some funny stuff on the side for the attendees. So I actually, at the time, they have this sort of design for the avatars. So I wanted to do something fancy, something pretty. So I actually did a virtual badge, so where everyone can create it, that their virtual badge. They put like a short bio, a short link, and we also did like you can search on the page for Easter eggs. For example, you can search for DD, the the greatest function in Laravel, and you can find an Easter egg where you can earn yourself a free ticket. It was actually pretty fun doing this project on a side, just out of the fun again. So all of this all again ripple away for another moment, and out of the blue this actually happened. Yeah, Mr. Eric Barnes just messaged me that they want to redesign the Laracon online website, and asking me, do you want to do part of it? Are you something interested? And I was, yeah, obviously, because this kind of opportunities don't come off often. So I just say yes right away. But he just hit me. How can I do this by myself? So at the time, I already have pretty much like an idea of how I wanted to do the website, but uh, as far as I'm a designer, I don't have like the right design skills to achieve what I thought about it. So I need to pull in a friend of mine, the one that I actually know that he can do the design that I imagine it for the website. So that the one that could help me, it was Flick Nelson. He was a long time friend from the high school, and I already know that he can nail the design stuff. So I just call him, pitch the full thing. It wasn't like he didn't know actually the Laravel community, so I need to pitch. Oh, this is a cool community. So hey, can you join in and help with the website and the design? I will follow you up with everything that can be can be on the design, and with we together and from him with a leap of faith we built this design, and I still believe that it's one of the designs that will forever be remembered in the community. It was a terrific experience working with Flick, working with Ian, working with Eric, and we had a lot of fun. And from the design, they enjoyed so much. I must say that we did the same for the summer, but at this time they trust us even more. So we actually had the opportunity to rebrand Laracon online, We did videos for the speaker, intro videos for the speakers that we release on YouTube and on Twitter. We did the merge. Again, an incredible design from Flake. And we did the rewinter version, and this was the last version that we did so far for Laracon Online. Another thing that from this moment that I had the opportunity to being given was to doing the Laravel logos. And that only happened to getting that close to community, and it was an incredible experience. I did the Laravel Breeze, I did the Sail version, I did the Octane, I did the Pint, I did the Pennant. So some logos. And fast forward to 2022, COVID was still around, but thankfully normality started to become, how do you say it? There's normal stuff getting back together. So the idea of in-person conferences started to appear, but with the social distance. So everyone just needs to be a little bit step aside from each other, but in-person conferences started to appear. So Laracon Online was around that time. They were planning another in-person, and I submitted a talk, call for papers, but out of the blue, I received a message from Yuren and asking me if they are looking for an MC or a host for the Laracon itself. So I know a lot of speakers that are going to be speaking at the conference. So it just threw me this ball, and I was just again, what me? I never had the opportunity or experience whatsoever to do some sort of stuff. I was pretty at the time comfortable on being a speaker, but yeah, again, opportunities like this don't appear often, so I just say yes. But internally, I was panicking. So this is me at my very first time hosting an event, and I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I pretty much have figured out what's the key times on speaking and addressing stuff, but I only had some notes on my phone. I didn't have any slides. I only had a mic. That's it. It was just one day on a conference. We had like a short version, so only 10 speakers and a short number of attendees. But at the time, still no masks. So it was great to feel normal again. And yeah, we had an open bar for the entire day. And they told me that, yeah, we had an open bar. So my plan, at least for the morning part, was to hold that information as far as I can. But there was one very happy attendee / speaker that wanted to just have fun. So yeah, after lunch, the secret was out and everyone just knew it. And it was awesome. Open bar. But yeah, overall, the conference went really well. I had a lot of fun. And it was pretty great experience of being a host rather than be a speaker. But what if one thing? This is one of my tweets from 2016 that I already pitched Sean McCool, that at the time was organizing Laracon EU. What if Laracon EU was going to Lisbon instead of just being settled in Amsterdam? Yeah, this is Lisbon. Not today, but normally we have a lot of sunny days. We have a lot of good food, good people, and good wine as well. And it was 7 years later from that initial wishes that, yeah, it finally happened. Laracon was coming to Portugal, was going to Lisbon, and we have going to have an event in Portugal. So pretty sure that Ronaldo was really proud of that moment. But let's assume one thing. It's really difficult to organize something close to you, and a conference as Laracon it is, rather to organize something remotely, rather to organize something not in your native language. So some stuff went a little bit on the side, something was not as going as planned. So this happened, this major tweet that Taylor just tweeted, and before he asked me if I can assist in the organization. So yeah, sure, let's do it, because Lisbon, I was so eager to have Laracon in Lisbon. So if they need some help, I will step in. But yeah, not only going to host, but also organize. Yeah, it's going to be all good. So no problem. Just throw an exception. No problem there. So 2023 just happened, and Olá Lisboa, from a crazy idea back from 2016, with all the problems and doubts, it finally happened. And Laracon was in Lisbon and was in my home country. And gratefully, at this time, I already have some experience. So now I have a plan. I have my slides, and I lost the mic because I went wireless. It was 2 days an event. We had 22 speakers. I think we still hold the biggest speaker at the Laracon conference, the record. We had 350 attendees, but something happened. Yeah, I remember that. So this happened during one of our coffee breaks. Out of the blue, we have these big tables, glass tables, with all the stuff for people to having their coffee break, and one just shattered right away. And I don't know what happened, but I wanted to focus on the faces of the catering staff. They are pissed. Somehow this guy is really happy, and I'm really suspicious because you can see in the back Zuzana is suspiciously leaving the crime scene. So maybe I need to tweet Zuzana something. I don't know. Okay, okay, it happened. But yeah, it happened again at the party after the conference. But at this time, someone was really happy, and Francisco the Tank Madeira was really happy about the thing that happened, and props to him because we use that image every single day as a meme. Thank you, Francisco. At this conference, we have the Laravel team event, so we have for the first time there's many Laravel core team members. So we run a Q&A asking questions and hear some experience from them. And yeah, that's so fun. It's really sad because that was one of the things I wasn't prepared. So one of the days started to rain. So the couch was really wet, and we need to put some shares on the side. So yeah, stuff can happen. That was intentional. But again, overall, it was awesome. It was on my home country. People had a fun, and even people approach me and tell me that for the first time they went to a conference, that it actually feel like a actual vacation rather just a conference. But yeah, we have some troubles with the videos. So it was one of the conference that what happened at that LaraCon. Unfortunately, it happened at that LaraCon. So it's my first time, I guess, saying publicly. So we lost all the videos. And for that, I want to say sorry, Taylor, Nuno, Christoph, Susanna, Miguel, Francisco, Marcel, Sonia, Mateus, Steve, Stefan, Diana, Stephen, Aaron, Kai, Bobby, Roberto, Sebastian, Katarina, Freik, Jeffrey, attendees, and the community. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, 1 month later, after that LaraCon in Lisbon, road trip to India. So I get in together with my fellow Portuguese colleagues, the Tank and Nuno. So we went to LaraCon India, and where I was a speaker at the most crazy event. It was 2 days. We had 12, 18 speakers, and this is really dark. One moment. I'm back. 18 speakers, and the single record of the biggest audience at the LaraCon, 1,200 attendees. Yeah, that's a lot of people. We had like one spicy host, the most incredible host that you can get, Mr. Vishal. And it was a hot event. It was hot that during the conference they called me because I always talk about the fire pan. I wanted to taste it. So Vishal just asked for one guy to come on stage and to shove it into my mouth, that thing. That's called the fire pan. Search on Google, on YouTube for videos of that thing. Is really good. It's quite freshening. It's like a Mentos, but yeah. And you saw the tweets happening on Twitter, right? It was crazy. I mean, the parties was never stop. We dance around every day, and yeah, it was crazy. At that time, I also did some Laravel logos, and I've seen them. So I did the Laravel Vault in Folio logos, but cool story that did happen. So those logos was actually done during the conference. So I just approached Jess, told me that maybe Taylor needs some logos for the new stuff that he's going to show us. I approached Taylor, do you want some logos? He just say, yeah, if you can do it. I just ran into the hotel, spent there 1 hour, come back, and those were the logos that he showed for the packages. So it was Laravel Folio in Laravel Vault. At India, we also had a team event, and Vishal invited me to run the Laravel team Q&A. Was again real fun. It went really well, but I still confused about this moment. Joe, if you're on the chat, please explain us what's about the face. Okay, moving forward. So on all of this stuff, connecting artisans, we all get together, and those experience moving on to the next thing is always the next thing. So I also had the opportunity to be at the Laravel Live London. I went there and gave the talk about the world of front draft. I had an amazing time with all my Brits friends in there. I met John for the first time. I met Ryan Chandler. It was really good. It's always a good experience to be a speaker. And I'm going to skip that. Yeah. LaraCon US. So LaraCon US, unfortunately, I missed that year. But yet still far away. I still made some logos for the packages and products shown at LaraCon US. So I did the Laravel prompt logo, I did the native PHP, and I did the Laravel her logo. But with all the hype that happened on the beginning of the year, around August until November. I must say, it's went really foggy. I mean, mentally, I suffer a little bit. So I went a little bit off the grid around the community, and I spent some time. I looked for some help, and still a little bit foggy, to be honest. But December appeared, and with the help and Christmas appearing around the time, because it's my favorite festive, the folks started to fade a little bit away. So I'm back. That's why I'm here, and I'm back in the game. It's a little bit weird and funny to talk about it, but I think it's good to talk about that. Not only the good stuff, not only talking about the good stuff, but also talk about the negative stuff part. Fast forward this year, 2024. So Laracon EU just happened this month. So this is a small picture. We went back to Amsterdam, and it was the biggest and brightest stage that I put my step in. Was really big. We had 2 full days. We had 21 speakers, and we have like 750 attendees. And no bang, good. No no dropping tables. Because we have like Petri. We have like Petri there, so no drop tables. But we had a beef. Yeah, a beef happened. A Laracon beef. A Laracon beef that started to appear around Twitter, and a Laracon beef between Marmite and Vegemite. So at the Laracon EU stage, I invited in the Brits and the Aussies to, and I served some toast with Marmite, Vegemite, and an imposter, a Cenovite, and they tasted. You might guess right. Tim and Jess just say out right away that Marmite is far the best one. Yeah, they say, not my words. Also, unexpected stuff happened. So, whoops. Yeah, mics sometimes go off, and so I need to step in. You might seen it on Taylor's clip from the talk on YouTube. So that happens. I just run into and hold the mic for the rest of his presentation. I don't know if you noticed it, but also did the Laravel logo for Laravel Reverb. So yeah, another one for the marks. And we had the most incredible Laravel team, to be honest. So we had like a quiz show, and we just switch around everything. So we need to add some extra seats, and I need to quickly redo all the application for the quiz. And it was really fun that the quiz had like all the colors for the answers, and out of the blue, Gus just tell us that he's colorblind. So it was a very funny moment. Again, it's all about all the conferences is all about the connecting artisans, connecting weird people from all over the world, and doing crazy stuff and epic faces and telling stories and get together. What's next? So next, I'm probably to say that I'm going to be on the Laravel Live Denmark. So if you're from Denmark and you're going to be there, don't forget to poke me. Let's do a selfie with the Caneco face. So yeah, skip ads. I need to get the subscription. So that's it. Thank you. Yeah, that happened.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Caneco. That was awesome sharing your experiences and getting to share with the audience what it's like attending some of these awesome conferences like Laracon EU. Still have yet to go, but yeah, looked like it was a lot of fun. So thanks so much for sharing.
I gotta say,
Yeah.
Caneco, I've been to numerous Laracon events in the US, and I've never experienced tables being smashed like that, let alone at multiple events. I don't know what's going on at these events in Europe, but maybe you have some insight.
You should see the India version. It's gonna get crazier.
I did see some clips. It looks like it was well attended and a lively atmosphere.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Awesome. So
And
just looking at,
every-
sorry, go
tell
for
me.
it, Dan.
No, go.
I was going to say, so looking at the time we maybe have time for a couple questions, but just to be respectful of everybody's time, thanks everyone for coming. We do have some final announcements to go over as well, but a last question here. So I wanted to know the name of the framework you developed, Caneco. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Oh, you're muted, Caneco.
I'm back in COVID.
There's questions in the chat about the name of the framework you created, as so many of us.
So
have
I heard, no worry. I need to switch around because I was hearing myself. That's why I was getting my brain all mixed up. When you're trying to speak and you hear yourself, no, it's a no-go. So my framework was, can you see my framework? I think it was like that name.
That's a good name. That's a good name.
Yeah.
Good one. Very Caneco inspired. So that was awesome. And yeah, thanks for sharing a lot and getting to see a little bit more about your personality as well. So that was awesome.
I think sorry, just the comment there. I think your story, Caneco, and you talked about, bringing people together, which is a huge part of all these events. But I think your story is at a general sense is similar to others that I've heard. And actually, it reminded me when you showed that one slide when you were giving your talk, a Tailwind talk, and then sure enough, Adam Wathen's there at the talk. But I think, Tailwind had a similar origins, right? I don't think it was ever Adam's intention to create a CSS framework, but he was like doing what you did, like decided to put himself out there into the community, into the public spotlight in some degree. And then things just kind of evolved from that, right? And I think he was streaming and people started asking questions about these utility classes he was using in his CSS. And, a number of years later, we have this great framework that evolved from that. So I think there's a real lesson there of just, put yourself out there when you feel you're ready, and, follow your passions, do the things that you're interested in. And there's a very good chance that it's going to connect with other people, and other people are going to maybe even reach out to you and be intrigued by what you're offering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's totally true. And one thing that from being a host, so I spend a lot of time on the backstage, and as you can see during my talk, I can go on a stage and be in front of 1,300 people, and I can be in front of 300, and I always get nervous. And I'm nervous at the moment. I'm a train wreck, I must assume. And I was mentioned before at the backstage at the Laracon, I also see a lot of top-notch speakers. And moments before they reach into the stage, they're all nervous and moving back and forth. So I'm just wanted to say with that is you're going to be nervous. You're going to do some messed up stuff, but put yourself out there, because good things will happen if you put yourself out there. And you see a lot of those stories, like Aaron Francis has a hell of a story. It's Michael Dorinda just shared a lot of those stories as well, with Jess Archer, that out of the blue, she's now working at Laravel. A lot of people always started with just putting yourself out there.
Mm-hmm. It's very inspiring, and it's a great way to grow as well. So that's awesome. I'm very inspired, Nico. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome. Was there any other questions that you could see in the chat there, Margot? Margaret?
We are good.
I see one from Adrian. Yeah, I need to do it.
What was the question from Adrian?
Adrian is asking, I already said yes. I just need the proper time because I need to do the Rector logo.
I also had the thought, all those logos you've created, if you could ever get connected with Amazon Web Services, you'd have work for the rest of your life creating logos for them. So
Someone just pitched it, I think last week. It was like redoing the PHP logo.
Mm.
That I thought about it so many times that I think is one of the logos that you can do it well, but is so well known, and you just by redoing it, just getting all the tradition of the actual logo. So I don't know, maybe there's some stuff that needs to be as it is.
All right. Cool. Anything else?
All right, I think that's what we got going on.
So why don't we get, before we kind of wrap things up, let's get Joel back in here. We can just thank both speakers for joining us. Hello again, Joel.
Hello again.
Yeah, well, I wanted to take this opportunity where you're both here, Joel and Caneco, to thank you both very much for offering your insights and your wisdom here in this February 2024 edition of the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. Appreciate having you both here, and I know the audience feels very much the same. So thank you both very much for what you shared today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you indulge me on something?
Yes. I can try.
Can you all do a Caneco face?
Is it like, it's kind of like staring off? Like,
How's it? Just.
It's funny you mentioned
maybe that.
And in a number of subsequent pictures, I noticed the Caneco face. It is something.
Yeah, that's,
for sure.
Because I don't know how to proper smile, so that's starting to appear. So I don't know how to place my face whatsoever. So I do the stupid face, and eventually it's starting to be like a normal reaction when the camera just popping in. I just do the face. Sometimes I just got hit by my wife because I'm at a wedding with her. And the photographer just appeared, and I was just having my proper suit with her with a fancy dress, and she just
I have a friend like that. I swear I've never seen a picture of him where it seems like he's smiling for real. It always seems put on in some way, but that's your version.
It's definitely memorable though. So that's what you're going for.
It's good branding, Caneco. Awesome. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Joel and Caneco, once again for joining us today. Just wanted to, is there anything else you guys, any parting thoughts, anything you guys wanted to plug on your way out?
Thank you for
Not me.
Well, thank you.
And to keeping up with me again.
Absolutely. We hope to see you both very soon in the Laravel community, and all the best. Thanks again for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. All right. And with that, we've just got a few notes here to kind of wind things down. So yeah, once again, thank you very much for Joel and Caneco for joining us. Before we kind of sign off for the day, we've got just a few slides we wanted to share here, Margaret. And here we go.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Dan. So again, we're giving away 2 JetBrains IDEs, a whole year subscription. So for anyone that's a big fan of Laravel, they have PHPStorm. They also have WebStorm for JavaScript, lots of different IDEs that you can use. And again, it's a 1-year subscription. So all you have to do is scan this QR code and we'll email the winners shortly after this meetup if you have won. And for next month, our next announcement would be TJ Miller is going to be speaking. So very excited to have TJ Miller speak with us. He has been, I've heard him talk at lots of different Laracon USs, and he's a great, talented speaker. So we are very excited to have him for March. When is the next one? It's going to be next March. Sorry, not next March.
We'll have some info to follow in the coming days about the topic of
stay tuned for March 26th. And then to stay connected, you can sign up for email reminders on the website. So meetup.laravel.com. Make sure to put your email address there, and you will get all the reminders for our next meetup and all other Laravel meetup news.
Awesome. Great. And with that, we would like to thank everybody for tuning in. It's great to get another one of these under our belt. And once again, thank you very much for Joel and Caneco for offering their wisdom and insights this month. Margaret, anything you wanted to touch on before we sign off?
No, this is a great second meetup, and we're very excited with this relaunch. So excited for next month.
Absolutely. Until we see you again at the end of the March, take care, everybody. Happy coding, and we'll see you in March. Bye now.
Bye.